All right, let's dive deep into an analysis of the 2024 electoral map using the latest polling data available from each state that has been surveyed so far. This is one of the most comprehensive breakdowns we've done. And by the end of this discussion, you're going to have a much clearer understanding of where both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump stand in this election. We're going to examine the polling numbers state by state, identify the current trends, and map out the potential paths to 270 electoral votes for both candidates. This is going to be an in-depth look at how the 2024 presidential race is unfolding, so let's buckle up and get into the details. We'll kick things off on the West Coast, starting with Washington State. Now, Washington has historically been a stronghold for Democrats, and right now, Kamala Harris is leading by a solid margin of 13.8. This is a pretty comfortable lead, but it's important to keep in mind that back in 2020, Joe Biden won the state by an even larger margin, 19 points to be exact. So while Harris is still in a commanding position, there has been a noticeable dip in Democratic support in the state. Even with this slight drop, Washington is still reliably blue, and we're going to mark it as likely blue on our map. This means it's almost certain to stay in Harris's column, but the margin is something to keep an eye on as we move closer to Election Day. Moving south to Oregon, the race is a bit more competitive than in Washington. Harris is currently leading by just 5 points. Now, that may seem like a decent lead, but compared to the 2020 results where Biden won Oregon by over 16 points, it's clear that the state is trending more conservative. Oregon has been a reliably Democratic state for a while now, but this tighter margin suggests there could be some movement in the electorate. For now, we're going to categorize Oregon as lean blue, which means it's still in Harris's favor, but the race is much closer than Democrats would like. This is definitely a state that could become more competitive as the election progresses, so it's worth keeping an eye on. Before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. Now, let's take a look at California, which is, of course, Harris's home state. Unsurprisingly, she's leading by a massive 24.5 margin, making it a solidly blue state once again. California has been a Democratic stronghold for decades, and Harris's connection to the state only strengthens her position here. There's really no question about California's outcome. It's going to deliver a huge chunk of electoral votes to Harris, which gives her a strong foundation to build on. So California is the first solid blue state on our map. Let's move a little further east and look at Nevada, where things get a lot more interesting. Harris is currently holding a razor-thin lead of just 1.1. Now, Nevada is one of those states where the polling can be a bit tricky. In recent elections, the polls have tended to underestimate Republican support here. For instance, in 2020, Biden was expected to win Nevada by a much larger margin than he ultimately did. With Harris's slim lead, it's possible that Trump could pull off a win here if the polls are once again underestimating Republican turnout. Still, based on the current data, we're going to put Nevada in the tilt blue category, meaning it's slightly leaning towards Harris, but it could easily flip to Trump if the dynamics shift even a little bit. Let's head over to Arizona now, where Trump is leading by 1.7. Arizona is a crucial state in this election because it was one of the few states that Biden managed to flip in 2020, defeating Trump by a razor-thin margin of just 0.3. However, in the 2024 race, the numbers are pointing to a Republican resurgence. Almost every poll conducted in Arizona shows Trump ahead, which suggests the state may be swinging back to the Republicans. I'm categorizing Arizona as tilt red, meaning it's leaning towards Trump, but it's still close enough to remain competitive. This is a significant win for Trump, as Arizona's 11 electoral votes could play a big role in determining the outcome of the election. Next, let's take a look at a couple of Democratic-leaning states in the Mountain West, Colorado and New Mexico. In Colorado, Harris is ahead by 11 points, which is a pretty comfortable margin. However, it's worth noting that the poll we're looking at was conducted by a Democratic-affiliated group, so there may be some bias in the numbers. Even with that in mind, Colorado has been trending more liberal in recent years, so it remains in the likely blue category for Harris. In New Mexico, Harris is leading by 8.5 points, which is a solid margin, but it's narrower than what Biden won by in 2020. New Mexico is a state where Democrats typically perform well, and while the margin may be tightening, we're still categorizing it as likely blue. Let's move on to Texas, one of the largest prizes on the electoral map with its 40 electoral votes. Right now, Trump is leading in Texas by 5.2. This is actually a slightly smaller margin than what he won by in 2020, but it's still a solid lead. Texas has been trending a bit more competitive in recent years, but Trump's advantage suggests that the state will likely stay in Republican hands for 2024. Based on this polling, we're putting Texas in the lean red category, meaning it's likely to go to Trump, though it's not as secure as other Republican states. As we move into the heart of the country, Trump is solidifying his support in several states. In Utah, he's leading by a massive 32 points, making it a solid red state. Similarly, in Montana, Trump is up by 17.5 points, so we're categorizing it as another solid red state. North Dakota and South Dakota are also firmly in Trump's column with leads of 27 points and 16.5 points, respectively. Nebraska, which allocates its electoral votes by district, is also looking strong for Trump statewide. However, Harris is leading in Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, which includes the city of Omaha, by 10. This district is more liberal than the rest of the state, so it's likely to go blue while the rest of Nebraska remains solid red. Let's move up to Alaska, where Trump is leading by 8 points. Alaska has traditionally been a Republican state, though the margins have been tightening in recent elections. Still, Trump has a clear lead here, so we're categorizing Alaska as likely red. Using to the Pacific, we don't have any recent polling from Hawaii, but given its strong Democratic history, we can safely assume that it will remain solid blue for Harris. Now, let's turn to the Midwest, where the battlegrounds really start to heat up. In Wisconsin, Harris holds a razor-thin lead of 0.8, but this is a state where Democrats have struggled in recent years. In both 2016 and 2020, the polling in Wisconsin overstated Democratic support. Clinton was expected to win Wisconsin in 2016, but Trump ended up taking the state, and while Biden won Wisconsin in 2020, his margin was much smaller than the polls had predicted. Given this history, we're categorizing Wisconsin as tilt blue, meaning it's slightly leaning towards Harris, but it could easily swing to Trump if the polling is off again. Michigan is in a similar situation. Harris is leading by just 0.7, which is a very slim margin. Michigan has traditionally been more liberal than Wisconsin, but like its neighboring state, the polling here has been unreliable in past elections. We're keeping Michigan in the tilt blue category for now, but it's definitely a state to watch as we get closer to Election Day. Pennsylvania is perhaps the most crucial battleground in this election. With 19 electoral votes, Pennsylvania could very well be the state that decides the entire election. Right now, the race is deadlocked, with both Harris and Trump polling evenly. Pennsylvania has been a key swing state in the past 2 elections, going to Trump in 2016 and then narrowly flipping to Biden in 2020. If Trump can win Pennsylvania again, it could be the state that puts him over the top. Based on the trend lines, which show Trump performing well in the state, we're putting Pennsylvania in the tilt red category. In the South, Trump is performing well in several states. Missouri, for example, is a likely red state with Trump leading by 10 points. Arkansas, Tennessee, and West Virginia are all solid red states where Trump is leading by double digits. South Carolina is closer, but Trump is still ahead by 10 points, so we're marking it as likely red. Kentucky, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana don't have recent polling data, but these states have been reliably Republican for decades, so we can safely assume they'll go to Trump. Finally, let's take a look at Virginia and North Carolina. In Virginia, Harris is leading by just 4.8, which is a smaller margin than what Biden won by in 2020. Virginia has been trending more conservative in recent elections, so while it's still leaning Democratic, it's a state to watch. We're categorizing Virginia as lean blue for now. In North Carolina, Trump is ahead by a slim margin of 0.6, like it Easter, but the trends favor him. North Carolina went to Trump in both 2016 and 2020. And it looks like he's on track to win it again in 2024. So we're putting it in the tilt red category. So after going through all the polling data, where do you stand? Now Donald Trump is leading in states that account for 245 electoral votes, while Kamala Harris is ahead in states worth 232 electoral votes. That leaves 61 electoral votes still up for grabs in the key battleground states of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Nevada. These states are going to be absolutely critical in determining the outcome of the election, and as we've seen, they're all incredibly close at the moment. There's still a long way to go until Election Day, and the dynamics of the race could shift dramatically between now and then. States like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan are going to be the ultimate deciders, and it's entirely possible that the race could come down to the wire in those battleground states. But as things stand right now, Trump is in a strong position to win re-election if these trends continue. So that's our detailed breakdown of the 2024 electoral map based on the latest polling data. I hope you found this analysis helpful. If you did, don't forget to like the video, drop a comment with your thoughts on the race, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any updates as we get closer to Election Day. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next video.